Well, hello, and welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I will be your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night we talked about damaged goods and about how our masters created, perhaps are still creating, artificial children. Created inside of a laboratory, mixed up inside of a petri dish somewhere. And then under black magic satanic ritual, when the dates are correct, when the signs or the planets are in alignment, whatever constitutes black magic ritual. The less about that I know, frankly, the better. These embryos are placed into the wombs of willing women who are already pregnant and are more than willing to allow their own children, their natural children, to be butchered inside of their own wombs. And to have these artificial children, these artificially designed embryos implanted inside of the slaughtered remains of their own murdered children inside of their own wombs. And these women do this quite willingly. They do it for money, for power, for status. Why anybody would do that, again, truly I don't know. I mean, I grew up with these people, and I have no idea why anyone would choose this as a way of life. I know with my own eyes that they live in the sewer. And nothing you or I can do will ever pull them up into the light of day. But on the other hand, they'll do everything they possibly can to pull you and I down into the sewer with them, because they desperately need company. Now in my own case, the woman, the female, who volunteered her own womb for this horror, she was already pregnant. She was pregnant with her first child, her first daughter. And she was a closet lesbian. And she really wanted this daughter. And not surprisingly, my guess is they lied to her. They promised her a daughter, and she got me instead. So not surprisingly, since I was not the replacement daughter she wanted, she hated me even more. And the thing about morons, the thing about really stupid people, the thing about people who practice hatred as a way of life, they will blame everyone else for what they do, never themselves. They'll never take responsibility for anything. These are the kind of people who will create Frankenstein's monster, well, me, and torture the creature until it goes crazy and rebels, and then they'll blame the creature. I don't know, it's human nature. I don't know why. But I guarantee that 98% of our people, of the human race, are like this. And quite a lot of the remaining 2% as well. And again, I don't know why. But you create something, you torture it, and then you blame it for what you have made it. I don't know. It's taken me decades to be myself. And every moment was... I can feel every moment of every day. I actually experience, when I'm awake, every moment of every day. Maybe for you, time passes very quickly. For me, time passes extremely slowly. I feel every moment. I can see the moment approaching. I can see it where it stops in front of me, and then I can see it as it moves on. That's really tiring, I'll tell you right now. But for the woman who was the incubator, where I was just stated, she did it of her own free will. She was the leader of her clan, of her tribe, of her gang. And she wanted money and power. And the men of the tribe were all in the U.S. military. And she, of course, used them for their money and their power. She hated and loathed and despised them. But she needed them. But she wanted money and she wanted power. I mean, and she got what she wanted, as much as street trash could understand what real power means. But the experiment disfigured her body. Again, I doubt our masters or their servants mentioned this side effect to her. And again, just another reason for this woman to hate me. She's actually the one who's personally responsible for breaking most of the bones in my body before I was the age of 5. Apparently, these artificial children and I don't understand why, are very, very large at birth. I was 11 pounds at birth, and this woman's body was permanently disfigured by this. She did eventually have the natural daughter that she always wanted. And that sweet little girl who I knew finally became the worst of them. And she overthrew her own mother and became the leader of the gang, the tribe. And in these particular, I could think of a really artsy-fartsy thing to say, these social groups, what they are, a gang of street thugs. They're trash. The only way you become the leader of this kind of street trash is to be the worst of the worst. And that sweet little girl became the worst of the worst. And I look back and I feel like I was to blame for what she had become. But the truth is, she came by it naturally. And it was her own choice, her own decision. She became what she became of her own free will. And I try not to let it make me sad. Now, I always thought that the reason for these experiments, and I've met lots of the victims of these things, lots of them, and we all had the same background, we all came from the same places, we were all put in the same kind of families, military-linked families, and we were all horrifically abused. None of us looked like any of the people that we grew up with. I originally thought that we were created to be psychic super soldiers, sex slaves, genetically modified slaves, trusted servants, genetically modified to serve our masters in a possible variety of things. I'm now seeing that was only half of the goal. There were lots of goals, many of which I doubt we could even imagine. But I think the major reason for the experiment, or perhaps the major outcome after some experimentation, multiple generations of these artificial children, they wanted to learn to hurt people more effectively. And they wanted to learn how to hurt people on a massive scale, a worldwide scale. Our masters plan, and they tell us their plans every single time, under black magic satanic ritual. Part of the ritual requires that the victims consent, and they have to be notified in advance of what they're going to do to us, and they do. They follow the letter of the law. So our masters always tell us in advance what they're going to do to us. And since we're too stupid to realize this, or too brainwashed or brain dead, we'll simply ignore it. But our masters have stated over and over and over again, they only want 500 million human beings on this world. And you wonder, there's 7 billion of us now, and in the past, event after event, only a small handful of people survive, a couple of dozen. So how is it possible? Where does this figure of 500 million survivors, 500 million people surviving the event come from, no matter what the event is? The masters on their own mouthpiece organizations, CNN, BBC, have already stated, and you can go online and find this, CNN says that there is a dead brown dwarf star they've quote-unquote just discovered outside of the orbit of Pluto. BBC says that there is a dead brown dwarf star inside of the plane of our solar system right now. And you can look this up. You don't need me for this. So something's coming, and even our masters are now admitting it. People are hearing massive sonic booms all over the earth. And I believe this is caused by little bits of rock falling out of the sky and heating up before they hit the ground, and they explode, which causes a sonic boom. And those little pieces of rock are going to be followed by bigger and bigger and bigger pieces of rock. So whatever the event is, it's coming. So again, our masters have told us they want 500 million human beings to survive out of 7 billion. If I were to guess, and that's frankly what you and I are doing here, we're trying to guess what's going on based on what very little we know. And we know so very little about this, even as we chat. It becomes more and more apparent. We know virtually nothing. But if I were to guess, I would say that our masters have actually built some underground cities to save some of us, because they need to preserve a handful of us. And 500 million people out of 7 billion is a pretty big handful. But again, they do nothing for anyone but themselves. So what is their purpose of having 500 million of us survive the event, whatever it is? Well, you and I know about quantum entanglement, physics, science, not religion, not morality, not culture, not civilization, physics. Quantum entanglement means that when you hate someone, you become the thing that you hate. The thing you hate will take control of you. And I've seen this in my own life way too many times. And let's say, just following the same thought process, our masters were suddenly to reveal to you and I what they've been doing to us, to the whole human race. And not just now, the last couple of years. Not going back to the December 2000 when I stood there and watched the last chance of our civilization being saved without bloodshed. And I yelled and I screamed and I begged and I pleaded, and nobody cared. And I went to talk to one of the very, very, very few people who knew what I knew. And I was going to pay him for his time. I was going to say, look, I need to pay you. Am I missing something here? And I went to meet him, and he wouldn't take my money. He just looked at me and says, Charlie, you don't need me for this. You know the truth as well as I do. And I never saw him again. He vanished. 7 years later, I fled the States. But what if our masters were to reveal to you and I, and to the rest of the world, what they've been doing to us, not since that time, but for the last few thousand years? I could safely bet that the whole human race would turn on them and would hate them forever. That's what they want. Now, what would happen if our masters not only agreed to restore all of our stolen wealth, give us back our homes, our jobs, our land? What if they also gave us the technology that would restore our world, clean up the radiation from Fukushima? Our masters have the technology of getting rid of radiation. And if you study the works of Nikola Tesla, you'll see that he proved that radiation, well, it's a long story. We'll get into that some other time. It's another long story. We'll talk about that. Now let's say our masters gave us back everything they've stolen from us and restored our planet to what it should be and told us what they've been doing to us for the last couple thousand years. But of course there'd be conditions. Of course we would have to leave them alive. And not just alive, but they'd have to be able to retain all of their personal wealth. Can you imagine? A crook breaks into your home, robs you, rapes your children, butchers some of your children, steals your bank accounts, robs you of your job, leaves you and your family broken, alone, penniless, and starving in the streets, but then comes back. The robber gives you back your life, but on the condition you don't hurt them. What do? You have to think about your family and the children you still have. But you get everything back, everything that was yours in the first place. Again, the condition is you have to leave these monsters alive, untouched, and wealthy. More rage. But why? The masters don't do anything for anyone but themselves. Can you imagine? The monsters, our masters, reveal everything they've done to us, done to our world, and then they step up. Not only that, but as the event occurs, they save 500 million of us. And we watch 6.5 billion people die. And I'll guarantee they'll make sure that we see them die. At that point, those 500 million of us who survive will hate our masters forever, which is exactly what they want. Under the science of quantum entanglement, we will become that which we hate. We will give ourselves willingly over to our masters with our own hate. Of our own free will, we will serve them. Now, the Christian Messiah, Jesus, and we'll talk about him someday, very nice man, whose teachings, all of his teachings, were taken by our masters and have been used against us. Now, the Christian Messiah, Jesus, said, turn the other cheek. And I once said, I've run out of cheeks to turn. I got nothing left. But he understood quantum entanglement. He knew that hate is very powerful. And he knew how hate would enslave you of your own free will. That's why I ask you, please, don't hate anybody. Not for any religious reason, not for any purpose other than the fact, don't give anyone like that power over you. I've done it. Don't do it. Just a suggestion. And so tonight I thought we might chat about the people and how throughout our history, or at least the last 8,000 years that we know about, considering you and I have been here for 2.5 billion years, it's not really a big amount of time, but it's all you and I have. Whenever you talk about any group of people, a tribe, a village, a family, a nation of human beings, no matter what they call themselves, no matter what language they speak, the name they give themselves, their nation, their tribe, always in their language means the people. It means that we are people and that everybody else is not. Now, our masters know this about us, and they use it against us with tremendous effect. Because you and I, we always fail to ask the most basic questions. Who, what, where, when, why, how. Now, any newspaper reporter, a real newspaper reporter, any journalist, again, any real journalist will recognize this list. Any halfway decent screenwriter or novelist will recognize this list. Any good storyteller will recognize this list, because these are the questions you have to answer in the story as you're telling it to make it an interesting story. For a reporter, an honest reporter, you have to answer all of these questions to get to the heart of any story. There's only so many ways you can tell a story or report on a story. And this is the list. So how about you and I, let's try this. For example, you and I have been told for thousands of years that the Jews are the chosen people. Well, I can tell you right now, right here and now, that yes, the Jews are indeed the chosen people. I have actually no doubt of that. But have you ever asked the question, what? The Jews are the chosen people, but chosen for what? I think I know the answer, and like most of the things I know, it's just not good. Now, for some reason, our masters hate the Jews. In fact, our masters hate the Jews more than they hate any other race of human being on this planet. Why? I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. But I know that our masters hate the Jews more than any other race on this planet. All I know about this is that our masters have a plan, which has been working for quite a long time now, to blame the Jews for everything our masters have done to us, everything they've done to the planet, all of the wars, all of the murder, all the butchery, all the hatred, all the cowardly acts that our masters have committed against the entire world for how many years I don't even know. But our masters are setting up the Jews to be blamed for everything. Now, how will they do this? Well, they've been doing it for quite a while. Our masters have been pretending that they are Jews for a very long time now. And in the name of the Jewish people, Our masters have been committing acts of satanic hatred that, frankly, you and I just can't face. We've tried here, talking about it, and even in the light of day, satanic hatred, it goes so far beyond gibbering madness. It goes beyond anything human that you and I can imagine or even talk about. Raping children. Well, sadly, we can imagine that. As sick and ugly as that is, I grew up with the street trash that does it. It was done to me. The CIA street scum, raped children as a regular activity. It was an event. Something that they were entitled to do, they felt, because of who they served, the CIA. And then above the CIA, the mandarins, and then above them, our masters. These bootlickers, these morons, this filth, they always felt entitled to do anything they wanted to you and me. But they were always emulating their betters, their superiors, their masters, because they actually believed that it made them masters themselves. It doesn't, as they eventually find out way too late, of course. And so they rape our children while pretending to be Jews. At least our masters do. But see, there's also all these black magic satanic rituals that need to be performed. And a freshly raped child is ideal for their purposes. And I'm so sorry to say these things to you. But you have to face, we both do, we have to face what our masters really are, what they really do, or you and I were lost. And not just now, but forever. I'm hoping that someday, after you and I have faced all of this, and whether they're overthrown, driven out, jailed, I don't know, but after, I'm hoping that we can talk about something else. What restaurant should we have dinner at tonight? Where should we take our holiday next week? Let's go see a movie. What do you want to see? I'd rather talk about things like that. But unfortunately, we can't talk about those things until we talk about these things and solve it without hatred. We have to do what's necessary, no more. And we have to do what it says we can do under the laws of the United States of America, the constitutional republic. But never hatred. And we know why now. So I'm sorry, we have to talk about this. So after our masters have raped our children, and these are very young children, they cut the skin away from their bodies, from their backs, and they tear out pieces of our children's flesh with their own teeth. Now at this point, our children are still alive. And then they are finally killed when they're no longer fun. And their blood is spilled over ritual altars, altar stones dedicated to the worship of their God. And it does not matter. I'm trying to get through this as quickly as I can. It does not matter if you and I believe that Satan exists. Our masters believe it. And that's all we have to worry about. And so our masters, pretending to be Jews, they eat our children. This is a story I first heard from one of the U.S. Army Air Corps intelligence morons I grew up with. He really believed that Jews ate Christian babies. And I actually told him to shut up. I think I was maybe 8 and he was like 60. But I said, stop it. I don't want to hear any more of your lies. And looking back now, I'm equally certain that he knew more about this event and firsthand. But see, they were not Jews. They were not Jews. They were our masters pretending to be Jews, so that the Jews, the people of the Jewish race, would get the blame for all of these horrors. But our masters do eat our children. As I say, one of their own slaves admitted it to me. You know, it's amazing over the years what people who come up to me on the street who I do not know and tell me their entire life stories. And then they feel better and they keep walking. And I'm just standing there going, what just happened? It's amazing the number of times I've been in the room with CIA assets, CIA agents, who just tell me everything they know. And this has happened to me my entire time here on this world. And can you imagine somebody that stupid? It defies my imagination to this day, the things that people have told me. It's just stunning. But eating our children alive is only one of the horrors that our masters commit. As we know, watching television, one of their greatest joys of life is war. They love war. Our masters love war against the weak, the helpless, the hopeless, and the defenseless. They love it. Our masters love to attack and to destroy any leader in any country that actually wants to make their country better, which means, of course, make their countries free for all time of our masters. Right now, the USA is murdering people in Libya. Right now. Why? Well, they were going to print their own paper money. Our masters love printing the money of other countries so they can control those countries. They don't care who's in charge, as long as they can control the money. Right now, today, you and I, as U.S. citizens, owe the Federal Reserve Bank, a privately owned company, not a government agency, owned and controlled by our masters. We owe the Federal Reserve Bank $14 trillion. Why? Because they print our paper money for us. No other reason. So that's why the USA, the United States of America Incorporated, is in Libya right now, because they wanted to print their own money. Also, the people in Libya were demanding that their oil that they sold to other countries, whatever currency they accepted, had to be backed by gold. The US dollar hasn't been backed by gold in decades. It's what they call fiat currency. It's just worthless, nothing. So the Libyans, if you buy oil from them, they wanted to be paid in something that was real. Paper dollars? Great. Is it backed by gold? Okay. If not, US dollars? No. We will not accept US dollars for our gold or for our oil because it's not backed by gold. And their leader was building a project, a massive project apparently, to take the salt out of seawater, desalinization they call it, and to turn their desert into a paradise. All the things that our masters hate. But the Jews, the chosen people, our masters hate them worst of all. And our masters created Israel by stealing it, by butchering the Palestinians who were already living there in peace. But then you ask, why? If our masters hate the Jews so much, why give them a homeland of their own? Well, you can actually ask the Israeli people that. The other day, and today is September 20th, I think, 2011, just last week or the week before, 25% of the entire population of Israel was in protest against the horrors being committed by their own government. Because our masters are their masters. And our masters rule in Israel, they rule in the United States, and they rule in England. But why did our masters go to the trouble of giving the Jews a homeland? Because what better place to put every Jew on earth and then make them a target for every act of horror that our masters have committed in their names? One nuclear bomb, Israel's gone. Taking as many Jews as our masters can arrange to be there. And then our masters will have their revenge on their ancestral enemy. So yes, the Jews are the chosen people. They were chosen by our masters to be the fall guy in this con that our masters have been running against us, the people of the world, to rob us, to rape us, to murder us, and then to blame the Jews for it all. So next time you hear something like this, the Jews are the chosen people. Okay, well, who said it? What does it mean? Where was it said? When was it said? Why was it said? And how is it to be done? And then answer the question for yourself. But I have to warn you about something. Thinking is habit forming. And the more questions you ask, the more questions you will ask. Now there's another race of human beings that have been singled out by our masters, the Aryan people, white folk. Now, you and I have been told for years and years now that the Aryan people are the master race. Well, again, I can tell you that this is absolutely true. Our masters want to preserve the Aryan race above all other races. But it gets back to the who, what, where, when, why, and how. For example, the Aryan race is the master race, but masters of what? Why do our masters want to preserve the Aryan race over every other race? Well, and I'm sorry, we have to say these things. We know that our masters eat children. They eat babies. But did you ever stop to wonder if they do indeed really prefer Christian babies? I'm sorry. I really am. We all have our favorite meats: lamb, beef, chicken, turkey, fish, pork. But imagine our masters after thousands of years of eating human beings. And it's not cannibalism, because our masters are the people. We are not part of the tribe of the masters. Therefore, they are people, you and I are not. So we cannot even call it cannibalism. We literally are cattle to our masters. But after thousands of years of eating human beings, those who are not the people, would you not think that they might prefer a specific type or breed of human being? I'm not joking. I'm not kidding. And I wish I was, but I can't. What if our masters have a taste not for Christian babies, but for blonde, blue-eyed, fair-skinned babies? Aryan babies. What if, and we've seen our masters in their unending war against quote-unquote people of color, people who are not white, people who are not fair-skinned and blue-eyed, people who are not blonde. What if our masters' war against all of these people has a different reason? I mean, have you ever wondered why the United States, England, and Israel, which are the real axis of evil, why is it that they hate anyone who is black or Asian or tribal of any kind? Tribal meaning not white. I mean, look at the places, look at the countries that the United States has been attacking lately for absolutely no reason at all. Pakistan, Libya, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan. Now, it's true, all these countries have oil, but then again, so do we. Oil, you have to remember, is a natural byproduct of the natural function of our planet. Oil basically just seeps up out of the ground all by itself, everywhere. We'd have no need at all to go anywhere in the world for oil. Right now, today, you can look this up, there is enough oil in just one 400-mile square section of Alaska that would power the United States for the next 200 years. And that particular field of oil keeps refilling. The oil they take out today is newer than the oil they took out 10 years ago. So we're in these countries for oil and for poppy seeds. Great. We control the poppy seeds in Afghanistan. Wonderful. It helps the major international top 1,000 corporations and the bankers who are their partners. But you know what's also in these countries? People with dark skin. Not a blonde anywhere. So why kill off all these dark-skinned people on the planet? Because the event has apparently have already begun, and billions of people are going to die anyway. So why do it now? Well, our masters keep telling us that they only want 500 million people on this planet, 500 million people to survive the event. People who will hate our masters so much. And remember, quantum entanglement. You become what you hate. Our masters prefer the taste of Aryan blood. Our masters prefer the taste of Aryan meat. You only want the survivors to be the ones that you want. The ones that you want to eat. You know, it's a ridiculous thing to say. But it doesn't make it any less true. So yes, the Jews are the chosen people. Chosen to take the blame for everything our masters have ever done to us. To be the fall guys in a con that's been taken in by the entire world. And yes, the Aryans are the master race. I can make a joke about Aryan master race cooking or something, but you know, I don't know how to get out of this. My nail in the coffin humor just doesn't cover it. This is not even a bad joke. But it doesn't escape the conclusion. It gets back to the concept of the people, which means that you and I are people, and anyone outside of our tribe are not people. They are animals to be hunted, to be eaten. And that's what our masters think of us. They are people, you and I are not. A vivid example of this is when the Maori people left Polynesia and they found New Zealand. They found there were already people living there, a race of white-skinned, red-haired people. Yeah, they call it Aturia, which I believe in Maori is the land of the long white cloud or something. And they found white people, Pakeha, they call them, white folk, already living on New Zealand. They were highly educated and very spiritual people. And they taught the Maori art and science and culture. But very quickly, the Maori ran out of red meat. There were large flightless birds like dodos. I think they were emus. But the Maori ate them all. So what did the Maori do? They turned to the next available source of red meat. Their teachers, the white-skinned, red-haired, gentle souls who had taught them. Why? Because they were not the people, or more specifically, they were not of the people. Well, when they ran out of white folk to eat, the Maori started eating each other. Well, again, not really, because you had multiple Maori tribes. So these various tribes would go against each other in war, one Maori tribe against another. But since your enemies were not of the people, they were not really Maori, they were not really people. The very first Maori word I learned in August 2007 was para para umu, which I was told by this very friendly taxi driver, which meant, in Maori, dirty oven. Now, he went on to tell me the story. I don't know if he was kidding or not. I get the impression he was not. It seems that one Maori tribe went to war against another. And the duty of the women of the tribe was to go out onto the battlefield and drag the corpses of the dead enemy warriors back into camp and throw them into the ovens, the dirty ovens, to be cooked. And in many cases, the enemy were not completely dead at the time and were being cooked anyway. But it was okay to eat people because they were not of the people. They weren't really people at all. They were animals. Another good example of this is when English bankers hired sailors to go to Africa to buy slaves and then ship them back to the United States to work the plantation. Now, none of those soldiers or sailors ever hunted for black slaves in Africa. What those sailors did was they made a deal with one black tribe, and who were the people, who were always at war with other black tribes in the area. They captured their enemy, enslaved them, ate them. Why? Because they were not people. So white sailors never hunted black slaves. They simply bought black slaves from other black tribes. It was okay to do that because they were not of the people. This is repeated throughout our history. And I don't think it has anything to do with our masters, as far as I can tell. It's all our own doing. And it happens today, frankly, at the most basic levels. I mean, myself having no family, I've been adopted, quote unquote, into various families, over the years. And I'll tell you right now that being adopted into an American black family actually means something real. Black folk take family very seriously in the States. And I've never been turned out of any of the black families that I am a part of. Now, white folk, American or otherwise, they universally seem to do have some problems. When white families have made me a part of their family, and even after I've been a member of their family for, years, I've contributed money and cooked and baked and time and effort and really made a contribution to the family. The moment there's even a hint, a thought, or even a possibility of the smallest financial problem or issue, I find myself tossed out the door so fast I never knew what happened. And I'm not the only one this has happened to. Because why? Well, the bottom line is I was not of the people. Now, normally, people like me would join a gang. You join a gang for mutual protection against the government, against people who would rob you, people who turned you out into the street, or against other gangs. You form your own tribe, at which point you are of the people. In the United States, there are 13 ruling families. I actually wrote a screenplay about this called Martini Street back in the early 1980s. It never sold because the idea that just 13 families owning the entire United States was unbelievable, the studios told me. And yet today we have the Super Congress, which has 13 seats on it, each seat representing one of the 13 ruling families who own the United States. Now you can look this up online. Go and look and see how FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, has divided the United States into 13 separate regions. They're maps. Go look at them. Then check out how the Vatican, the Catholic Church, has divided the United States into 13 regions. Lay those two maps over each other. They're identical. And again, you and I are not of the people, not of those 13 families. We are not people to them or to our masters. But we live in those regions, which means we are the property of the family who owns that particular region of the United States. You and I are cattle. And for some reason, even the fact that you and I are cattle, we still turn on each other. I don't understand. It's up to you to decide. I leave you with a blessing and hope it means something to you. May you live as long as you wish. May you love as long as you live. For the 2012fad.com, this is Charlie Bluehawk. The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel fighting his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race, their black magic, captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.